You've entered Interstellar Chronicles. Close your eyes and drift into another world, a place where stars whisper forgotten names, where time folds and destinies collide across galaxies. Your journey begins now. I was sent to negotiate with aliens. Falling for their princess was not in the mission plan. They called it a peace mission. To me, it felt more like being tossed into a black hole wrapped in a smile. One shuttle, one voice recorder, one ambassador. Me. Earth had finally earned an audience with the Ilyari Dominion, a multi-world empire older than our solar system. Beings of luminous poise and ethereal stillness, they resembled the gods of our forgotten myths more than anything born of biology. Slender, tall, with eyes that reflected stars and minds like crystal blades. They said we were fragile, naive, reckless. They weren't wrong. Still, we'd come a long way since we first beamed signals into the void. Now we had trade routes, orbital cities, language software. Enough to be interesting, not enough to be equals. The Ilyari invited us aboard the Varelian Spire, their spaceborne citadel drifting near Epsilon Eridani. A diplomatic gesture, they claimed. But I could read the subtext. We were a curiosity, the test, and I was the subject. My arrival was uneventful. Cold docking bay, no welcoming committee, just a silent corridor that led me through a palace of bioluminescent stone and whispering machinery. The Ilyari didn't waste energy on pleasantries. Or perhaps they didn't think I'd understand them. I met with scholars, technocrats, advisors. Each one looked through me rather than at me. Every conversation was a diagnostic scan wrapped in civil words. And always, her presence lingered in the air like distant thunder. She didn't show until the third day. She entered the chamber like a blade unsheathed. 7 feet of silent grace. Her skin a deep sapphire hue that shimmered like moonlight on midnight waves. Her eyes were crystalline silver. Not glowing, but almost too reflective. Like twin mirrors that refused to lie. Her hair flowed behind her in loose strands of shimmering black-violet silk, held in place by simple silver fastenings. "Ambassador Carter," she said, a voice smooth but precise, laced with the subtle bite of someone used to command. "I am Valerian of House Teixeira. Princess, I learned later, a high-ranking emissary, not a figurehead but a power in her own right. You're taller than expected," I said, before my better judgment could intervene. A pause. Then the faintest lift of one perfect brow. "And you're softer than expected." I smiled. "Let's see if we can surprise each other." She sat, her posture perfect, her gaze evaluating. The chamber felt colder in her presence. Not from malice, but from control. Precision. She was a creature sculpted from discipline. But there was something else in her. Something restless beneath the surface. Over the next few days, she led every exchange. Her advisors stood back while we talked. It was clear she wasn't just a diplomat. She was a lens through which they were measuring the soul of humanity. And somehow, even as I watched her dissect me with her questions, I found myself watching her more closely in return. Every interaction was a test. I was prodded, questioned, observed. Not by instruments, but by minds honed like monofilament. Valerian led the sessions, always flanked by robed advisors who said little but glared plenty. I learned quickly, the Ilyari valued logic, heritage, and precision, but they lacked chaos, lacked warmth. Even among their own, touch was rare. Emotion, restrained. Art was mathematical. Music was structural. Stories were histories, never fantasies. Except for her, Valerian asked things others didn't. About earth poetry. About what it meant to grieve. About why humans laughed even when they were afraid. She never reacted openly, but I began to notice the subtle cues. A stillness that lasted a breath longer. A flick of her gaze when I quoted something unexpected. "You burn so easily," she said once, almost to herself. "And still, you run into the fire. Maybe that's the only way we know how to live," I answered. She didn't smile, but she didn't walk away either. That night, I found an ancient Earth poem waiting on my data tablet. Untranslated, but clearly pulled from the archives. A gesture, The next day, I brought her a song. She told me about the Council of 12, the ruling body of the Iliari Dominion. The oldest bloodlines, each representing one of the core philosophies: order, legacy, precision, discipline, hierarchy, silence, memory, structure, intellect, control, vigilance, and preservation. House Teixeira was aligned with structure, but Valerian, she confessed that she no longer believed in that rigidity. She thought it had calcified the Iliari spirit. There was a time, she whispered beneath the starlit canopy, when we danced to music no algorithm could compose, when we painted not with lines, but with madness. But now, we prune every spark until only symmetry remains. And you want the sparks back, I said. Her fingers hovered near mine. I want to remember what it was to feel uncertain, and still reach forward. Later that cycle, Valerian took me into the deep sanctum, a chamber not meant for off-worlders. Walls hummed with organic circuitry and ancient glyphs, tracing thousands of years of Dominion history. We stopped at a relief sculpture depicting an old war, Iliari against a lesser species. Their defeat was carved in meticulous detail. "Do you know why they keep this?" she asked. "To remember?" I guessed. "To remind," she corrected, "that we do not negotiate with those who are weaker. That mercy is disorder." "Then why am I here?" "Because I challenged that order, and you proved it deserved to be challenged." A week into the talks, the council cracked. A faction within the Iliari viewed the alliance as contamination. They drafted an ultimatum: break off negotiations or risk internal schism. Valerian was ordered to step back. She didn't. Instead, she summoned me to the quiet gardens near the ship's starlit hull. We sat by the glowing vines that pulsed with soft bioluminescence, casting light that shimmered across her skin. "They fear you," she said. "Us," I corrected. She touched the petals of a glowing vine, the first sign of softness I'd seen in days. "They think emotion is corruption, that I've let your presence erode my discipline." "Has it?" She looked at me then, for a long, silent moment. "Yes." She stood and turned away, voice quiet now. "Do you know what they call you when I'm not present?" "The lesser, the soft, the broken thing that smiles too much. And you, what do you call me?" She faced me again. "The first variable I've ever wanted to protect." Then quieter, "Break the rules with me." The alarm screamed. Crimson light flooded the garden as kinetic shields activated across the dome. A sonic tremor followed, the kind that precedes weapons discharge in vacuum. Valerian snapped into motion, fingers dancing across a panel embedded in the garden wall. Her posture became warrior sharp. "What's happening?" "A faction strike. They've breached the inner hangar. This wasn't supposed to escalate this fast." I followed her into the corridor as masked Iliari security sprinted past us, wielding elegant rifles that hummed with energy. We rounded a corner and met the first wave. Armored dissenters burst from the mist, anti-alliance radicals in crimson-plated suits, their movements fast, brutal, precise. One raised a shock lance, and then he was down, Valerian's hand flaring with a pulse of violet energy. Her strikes were beautiful in their violence, controlled, exact, and devastating. I ducked behind cover as another burst of fire hissed past me. "Stay close," she ordered, pulling a blade from her waist. Not ceremonial, but serrated and ion-charged. "You're not a diplomat," I muttered. "I was trained as one, and as a shadow sister before that." She took down two more with fluid grace, never once hesitating. I'd seen elite human soldiers, but none moved like this. She wasn't just defending me. She was fighting for the future she glimpsed in a song. A smile. A human who laughed in fear. We pushed forward together, side by side. And through the chaos, I knew this wasn't just survival. This was a declaration. Valerian had broken the rules. And now, so had I. The corridor fell silent but for the soft hiss of disabled weapons and the distant thrum of containment fields reactivating. Valerian stood over the last of the fallen radicals, her blade shimmering faintly with residual energy. Her chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, but a tremor lingered in her fingers. Not from fear, but from something far more volatile. She turned toward me. Her eyes, usually unreadable, were wide now, unshielded. You could have been killed, she said, the words sharp with more than concern. So could you, I replied. That's different. Why? Because I'm soft. I stepped closer, voice low. Because I'm the fragile one? No, she whispered. Because if something happened to you, I don't know what part of me would remain loyal to anything else. The silence between us deepened. Not empty, but electric. The garden lights flickered as backup power cycled. Her blade fell from her hand, clattering softly to the floor. I reached out, fingers brushing hers, cautious, uncertain. She didn't flinch. Instead, she took my hand and pressed it against her chest, where beneath the cold fabric of her uniform, I felt the rhythm of a heart that beat faster now than ever before. I've kept every law the Dominion carved into my bones, she said. Accept this. Then she kissed me. It wasn't delicate. It wasn't ceremonial. It was fierce, the kind of kiss that rewrote battle plans and burned down bloodlines. When we finally broke apart, her forehead rested against mine. They'll come for us now, she said. Then let them. The escape was not cinematic. It was desperate. Smoke seeped from the corridor vents, where overloaded relays sparked in blue and green. The ship's internal AIs had split along ideological lines, some helping us, some hunting us. Even within the Dominion's towering intellect, there was fracture. Valerian led us to servant paths known only to highborns, winding behind the grand sanctums and memory archives of the Varelian Spire. At every turn, I saw pieces of their world most offworlders never would. Generational vaults, echo chambers where songs of extinct species played in permanent memorial, suspended gardens where gravity twisted at will. This was once a sanctuary, she whispered. Now it is a tomb waiting for its trigger. What will they do to you if they catch us? Strip my name, my memories. My soul would be archived, but never reborn. The Ilyari didn't die as humans did. Their minds were preserved, copied into crystalline lattices. In theory, eternal. But to be denied rebirth, to be labeled as corrupted, that was worse than death. It was obliteration. We reached the subcore, a nerve center of the Spire's control systems, guarded by sentient glyphs that shimmered as we approached. Valerian placed her palm against the central node. It flared with light, scanning her DNA, her voice, her memories. They'll trace this, I warned. I want them to. With a gesture, she triggered a localized blackout across the upper tiers, scrambling council surveillance for a brief window. This is our only chance. The courier ship in Dock 9. It's not under their faction's control yet. We can reach it if we move now. As we ran, I glanced back at the lights dimming behind us. The weight of their civilization pressed against me. A people ancient, mighty, and terrified of change. Why are they so afraid of us? I asked. They aren't, she said. They're afraid of what will make them remember, what they buried. We reached Dock 9 just as another squad intercepted us. No words, just energy blasts. Valerian shielded me with her own body, returning fire with that same brutal elegance. Less like a warrior, more like a storm. I found cover, pulled a fallen weapon. Not elegant, not trained, but effective. Together we forced them back. When the last fell, silence returned. She turned to me, blood silver blue, tracing a cut along her arm. You're bleeding. So are you. Her eyes softened. Then we matched. We boarded the courier ship and disengaged from the Spire. The moment it vanished into slipstream, Valerian collapsed into the pilot seat, breathing hard. I took her hand again. No hesitation this time. We traveled through the outer systems, hunted, yes, but not helpless. Valerian sent fragmented messages to the few sympathetic houses that might shelter us. House Varanth, known for their philosophies of transcendence. House Malkari, artists and quiet rebels. Each response came cautiously, encoded in symbols from dead dialects. You were never just a princess, I said as we reviewed them. No, I was always a threat. Each world we visited told more of her people's story. I began to see how the Dominion had risen, not through strength alone, but unity forged in fear. Every emotion was categorized, every deviation corrected. Love was a function of compatibility metrics. Desire, a chemical indulgence only permitted under ritual conditions. What we have, she said one night, beneath a canopy of twin moons, is considered a disorder. Then maybe it's time the Dominion caught the fever. She laughed, the first true laugh I'd heard from her, a sharp, bright sound, half wonder, half rebellion. You would have made a dangerous Ilyari, she said. And you, I murmured, brushing my lips near hers again, are already a dangerous human. She didn't pull away. But just as our moment deepened, a proximity alert blared through the ship's console. Valerian snapped upright, fingers darting across the control interface. Intercept signal. Military class. Not Ilyari. Her eyes widened. It's the oligarch guard from House Silurith. They weren't part of the coup. No. They're worse. They profit from division. If they bring us in, the council won't have to argue over mercy. They'll have a public spectacle. She swore. An old dialect, sharp and musical, and jerked the ship into evasive vector. What do? I asked. We run, or we force them to make a choice. We darted into the shadow of a gas giant, using its magnetosphere to scramble their long-range sensors. But Valerian wasn't aiming to escape. She was heading for the Narrated Ring, a defunct trade station once held by neutral houses before it was blacklisted during the border culling. Rumors said it was haunted. I now understood that haunted meant politically radioactive. If we speak from there, she explained, the signal goes to all houses, every channel, even the forbidden ones, unfiltered and censored. The moment we docked, she keyed a pulse beacon and activated the ancient broadcast systems, her voice resolute. This is Valerian of House Teixeira. I speak not as royal, but as rebel. I stand with the one your systems call lesser, with the species you mock for loving too loudly. We have seen what fear has made of us. I will not be part of it. As her message spread, I watched ripples form across the Ilyari net. Reactions ranged from furious to astonished. But some houses, old, subtle houses, sent cryptic acknowledgments. And then came a face on the central monitor. An elder, eyes like molten glass. Archon Valen of House Silurith. You seek a vote, princess? Then let the council convene. But know this, no union with the lesser kind shall go unpunished. Valerian stood tall. Then I welcome judgment. Let them decide if their empire is ruled by fear or by the courage to evolve. After she closed the channel, she turned to me. Her shoulders dropped slightly. I've cast the stone. Now the tide comes. I took her hand. Then we face it together. Outside, ships began to arrive. Not with weapons raised, but with banners lowered. A signal in Ilyari tradition that negotiations would resume. Not from strength, but from hope. And maybe, just maybe, from love. The council hall of Eliar Prime was a cathedral of starlight and crystalline towers, suspended in low orbit above their sacred moon. Each house sent an emissary. The air shimmered with encoded pheromones, part diplomacy, part threat. Valerian stood in the center, her presence defiant. I was not permitted inside, but she insisted I remain within sight, framed by the translucent wall behind her. I could feel the stares, curious, disgusted, awakened. Valen spoke first. You break every law, every right to defend your sentiment. A genetic aberration born from exposure to human instability. And for this, you ask redemption. I ask recognition, she said, that we are more than equations and obedience. That feeling is not failure. Another voice interrupted, softer, ancient, matron Kirill of House Thesari. You forget, Valen, that it was love which ended the machine wars, that it was empathy that spared the Karathi. Our greatness was not in conquest, but in what we forgave. Whispers followed. Divides opened. A political fracture spreading across generations. Meanwhile, behind closed walls, I watched Valerian's mask slip when no one looked. She was tired, alone, the price of leadership already cutting deep. "I don't belong here," I whispered when we met in private again. "You belong where I believe you do," she answered, placing her hand to my chest. "And I believe in you more than I do in any council vote." That night, she wept in my arms, silent and trembling, her face pressed to mine, as the fate of her people hung in the void. "I was trained to die for my house," she whispered. "No one warned me how hard it would be to live for myself." I held her tighter. "Then let's live for each other, whatever comes next." The vote took place over 7 rotations, each house cloistered in ancestral chambers aboard their legacy ships. But something began to stir beneath the formalities. Murmurs of strange disappearances. A diplomat from House Solmari vanished en route to cast their vote. An encrypted message, later decrypted, showed the crest of House Sillareth burning behind his pleading face. "Sabotage," Valerian said, her jaw clenched. "They're undermining the vote from the shadows." We retreated into hiding on the sacred moon's subsurface sanctum, a place known only to the Teixeira bloodline. It was there, beneath shifting crystal light, that she unsealed an artifact sealed by her great-grandmother, a memory shard encoded with ancient truths. "They manipulated history," she whispered. "Valen's line rewrote the treaty with humanity after the Dissonance Accord. What they call weakness was once alliance. We were never meant to dominate the lesser races. We were meant to walk beside them." It was evidence strong enough to fracture the legitimacy of House Sillareth. But with it came danger. On the final night of deliberations, their strike came. Saboteurs cloaked in void-light armor breaching our sanctum. Valerian drew twin photon blades and fought like poetry incarnate. I fired from cover, desperately trying to match her rhythm. The chamber was chaos. Sparks, screams, smoke. One of them cornered me, blade raised. She turned mid-parry, shouted my name, and took the blow instead. Blood, violet and shimmering, bloomed across her side. She fell into my arms as I dropped the attacker. "Stay with me," I begged. Her lips brushed mine. "Don't let them bury the truth." Then the rest of her guard broke through, driving off the attackers. Valerian lived, barely. But now the stakes were undeniable. This was no longer politics. It was a war of ideals. And somewhere, in the shadows of Eliar Prime, the old guard had just declared it. Recovery was not a straight line. For days, Valerian drifted in a near coma, encased in an organic stasis cradle, the kind only royal bloodlines could access. I remained at her side, holding her hand, whispering anything to remind her there was someone waiting on the other side. When her eyes finally opened, they shimmered with pain and recognition. "You stayed," she murmured. "I never left." We were moved to a hidden healing enclave under House Thesari's protection. There, far from the council's reach, we rested. Healers bathed her in light, realigned the damage done by the Void Blade. I tended to her, learning Ilyari customs, like how certain harmonics in song could ease pain, how flowers weren't gifts but promises of presence. She gifted me one, a single bloom that pulsed with inner light. "I have no words for what I feel," she said, "but this comes close." As her strength returned, so did the bond between us. Deeper now, forged in fire and near loss. We would speak late into the cycle nights, her head resting against my chest, her voice low. "They'll come again, not with blades but with lies, with seduction, with exile. Then we outlast them," I said, "one truth at a time." Our moments turned intimate not just in flesh, but in soul. She showed me how Ilyari bonded through memory sharing, a ritual few had used in centuries. When her fingers touched my temples, I saw her childhood, her first pain, her secret doubt. I showed her mine, earth sky, my mother's laugh, the loneliness I carried into the stars. We wept and kissed and swore, in whispers, not to be broken by the shadows between stars. The alliance, too, began to rebuild. House Thesari called for a secondary summit. Not a formal council, but an accord of restoration. Small at first, brave, quiet, they asked Valerian to speak. She rose before them, pale but unbroken. "I do not stand here whole," she said, "but I stand here honest. And I would rather be wounded with love than strong with hate." It was not thunderous, not defiant. It was real, and real for once was enough. The old alliances trembled, but did not fall. Yet the council's inner ring, those with true power, began their own maneuvers. Archon Valen called for a private conclave, a prelude to restructuring the council charter. Whisper suggested he meant to expel any house that did not conform. Valerian, despite still healing, demanded a place at that table. And with her, so did I. We entered not as supplicants, but as challengers. Inside the house of Silurith, hidden from prying eyes, a struggle for power was unfolding. Everything was set for the council to meet, but not in the usual open hall, but in one of the abandoned rooms, where the walls concealed more secrets than visible threats. Only a few elders knew the location of the meeting, and their faces, drawn with tension, reflected the danger that awaited at every corner. The council gathered in full, no, almost in full. Rare and infinitely secretive faces had, in essence, become part of a permanent game where there were neither friends nor enemies, only interests and manipulations. Next to the throne, which was usually ascended only by those ready to hide their cards, sat Ferris Gale, one of the most powerful and influential elders. His persona was more of a mask than reality. He often spoke little but always found the right words, turning even the most innocent phrases into instruments of power. His last move in the game was a cunning one. He proposed a strange alliance with Tarvin, an elder with a mysterious past, who was thought to be on the brink of death. His shadow, however, never left the house. Suddenly, after everyone fell silent, when the threat of blackmail in the air became almost tangible, a stranger entered the hall. A mysterious elder with an unclear reputation, Khazar. He was known for his quiet nature, but at this moment, his eyes burned with intensity, and it was clear that he had come with the intention of destroying the familiar order. He placed a small scroll on the table, hidden beneath black cloth. Just recently, Khazar had been a minor player, but his new alliance with someone within the council had turned him into a dangerous enemy for all. "The one who has been manipulating us has long since miscalculated." Khazar spoke, his voice full of confidence, shattering the usual silence. "Everyone has their secrets, and I can prove it." Secrets. Khazar knew too much, and that meant that everyone sitting around the table now had their own game to play. But as always, the real question was not who would ultimately emerge victorious, but who would remain in the shadows. Tarvin, the elder with the heart of a lion, was the first to respond. His mustache trembled slightly, his eyes burning with genuine anger. He knew this was a game of survival, and in order to survive, one had to rely on strategy, not virtue. "You must remember that here, not only strength but also loyalty is at play. And I am loyal to one thing, my own ambitions," he said, though his gaze was attentive. The strange alliance with Khazar could be his chance, if only he chose the right moment. The meeting, which resembled a game of chess, became a battlefield where every move was made with great caution. Everyone knew, never underestimate even those who appear weak. And so, under this blanket of intrigue and fear, a new alliance was revealed between Khazar and Elirin, an elder whose intentions were always hidden behind an ocean of vague words and mysterious smiles. However, things were not so simple. Khazar had taken on the role of the hidden player, but if he was an ally, then who stood behind him? This question troubled not only the elders but also those who watched from the shadows. The romantic game of blackmail had not bypassed this political front either. And although there were several figures in the room who carefully and skillfully manipulated their partners, an unclear threat lingered in the air. One of the elders might suggest a meeting with a mysterious lady connected to the affairs of the house, holding secrets of love, behind which lay fears and goals of unknown scale. A secret meeting, where manipulations and extortions became part of the strategy, could turn out to be the decisive turning point for the House of Silurith. But for that, One had to act quickly, decisively, and remain unnoticed in their true intentions. Thus, on the council's table, there was no room left for uncertainty. Here, where everyone was involved in secret games, the word betrayal became the very weapon that could inevitably lead to the final battle for the future. Valerian's breathing was shallow, but steady. The wound pulsed with faint violet light, a sign her body was beginning to repair, but slowly, too slowly. I carried her from the sanctum through the flickering corridors of crystal and memory, until the surface bloom of the sacred moon welcomed us with silence and stars. The council's decision had yet to be announced. Ships still orbited in tense formation above, banners half raised in uncertainty. House Sillareth remained silent. The vote hadn't ended, it had scattered. Fear had made cowards of some, martyrs of others. But something had been set in motion. I watched the starlight glint off the horizon, Valerian resting beside me, her hand wrapped around mine with quiet defiance. In that moment, there was no war, no council, no lineage or law, just a question neither of us dared speak aloud. What now? Maybe the Dominion would fracture. Maybe it would evolve. Maybe we'd run again, or stand our ground, or disappear into some forgotten system to live as myth. But as I looked into her eyes, bright, defiant, alive, I knew one thing. Whatever came next, the stars would remember this, and so would we.